Okay, everyone, good afternoon. It is Monday, May 18th, 2026, and I'm calling the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. I'm seeking a motion to approve the minutes of April 27th, 2026.
So moved. Second.
Second? Okay. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The committee will be asked to approve the audit of the bills. I am seeking a motion to approve the audit of the bills as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Well, we have Excellence in Action, Thomas Jefferson Elementary, but they are not here right now. It'll be a little bit late, and so we're going to skip ahead. We'll skip ahead to agenda item 7, recommendation for preliminary 2026-27 budget. Ms. Channel, Assistant Superintendent of Operations, will present the preliminary budget for the 2026-2027 school year. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Better respond. Right.
So we are looking at the initial budget. You know that this is a lengthy process, so we are in the next step of that process. The highlights of our initial budget, the budget calendar. So we started this process in January, and we will continue to look at and develop this budget throughout the next several months, and we will do final approval in October of 2026. The basis of the initial budget came from the budget assumptions that were presented back in January. We did budget reconciliation at the last board meeting. And so those things are continuing to be a part of the conversation that we're moving forward with. There will be budget adjustments. So we look at pupil count, private school voucher costs, final staffing plans, and salary adjustments. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then just the initial budget by fund, I will show that to you and we'll present that information. So here's our budget calendar. I showed something similar to this when I presented the budget reconciliation plan. You've already approved the budget reconciliation plan. We are now here at the committee approval for this initial budget. And then I will be back with you again on June 8th for that final approval. And we will talk about some defeasance in addition to that, that deals with the prior year. Go ahead. And like I said, we'll continue through with all of the dates until we get to that final adoption of that budget in October 27th of 26. So the basis of our initial budget, those budget assumptions that were shared, the budget reconciliation, I just pulled a few things that we were looking at as far as expenses and revenue. So for expenses, we had that increase in some of the employee group wage salaries by that 2.63%. That aggregate health insurance premiums, we increased to 10%. If you remember from the assumptions, we'll go from 10 to 8 to 6 back down. And then there were just salary adjustments for some of the employee groups that you gave approval for at the last board meeting. And for revenue, we had that reduction of certified staff at the elementary level based on those pupil enrollments, as well as district budgets that were reduced by 1.5%, and then that adjustment to the high-cost special education reimbursement that we talked about as well. So with annual pupil counts, we have that third Friday count that happens in September that allows us to know actually how many students are enrolled in our district and coming to school. So that will happen, and that has an impact on our state aid and the revenue limit that is set. We have some fluctuations with declining enrollment, but we have that 3-year rolling average. So really, we have some protections from that, but we will continue to monitor that as we're looking at budgets. And then open enrollment revenue is something that we pay attention to. So we pay attention to any of those open enrollments coming to us from other districts, as well as the ones that are going out. For the parental choice program, the private school vouchers, we won't know those costs until October. As this has been shared before, it does have an impact on us because We have to tax for that amount in our community, but that is money that we end up sending back to DPI that is then sent straight to private schools. So that has an impact on our budget as well. And then the tax levy and mill rate, we won't get to that until we're further down the road because we have to have accurate numbers when we're looking at budgeting for that. And then we'll also talk about defeasance strategies for paying off debt for the future as well when we get to that point for our budget. So here is our initial budget for 26-27 by fund. So you'll see that in Fund 10, that's our general fund. You'll see the money here, the expense including the transfer to Fund 27. So then we have the revenue there. For Fund 27, which is special education, you'll see the breakdown there as well. Fund 38 and Fund 39 are our debt service funds. So non-referendum is 38 and then referendum is 39. Over time you will see that Fund 38 drop off, but that won't be until after the 26-27 year. Fund 50 is our nutrition services fund. And then for Fund 80, that is our community service fund. So I'm going to pause here to see if there are questions on anything that was shared.
Let me put a motion on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
First, I'm seeking a motion to recommend to the full board an approval of the preliminary 2026-2027 budget.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? Go ahead.
Just one on the health insurance. Nationally, utilization has been down the first 4 months of the year. Do we have any update from M3 on what our trend is showing?
I will have to check into that. I'm not sure right now, but I can get back to you on that.
I was just curious because I saw the 10%, which I think is still the right thing to do from a budget perspective, but
Yeah.
we may get some positive news there. Maybe we won't, I don't know, but overall national trend is favorable.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I had a question on the health insurance as well. I think it was the Hayward School District that found they had a huge increase in their costs, and it blindsided them. They were almost going to ask the teachers to take cuts. Do we have any firm numbers yet on what next year will be, so we don't, mess up the numbers and the calculations you've got?
I believe we've looked at all of those things, but I will just double check with.
And the
Okay.
10% is what we decided.
Yeah. Yeah. So we should be good.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, with the 1.5, what are the buildings deciding to cut? How's the 1.5? What's
Yep.
getting cut?
Yep, so the 1.5% that's coming from all the district budgets, I provided that information back to the buildings so they know exactly how much money that is from their budget, and they're getting to decide where they would like to apply that deficit.
Okay.
Pencils.
Can that be reported back to us in some ways? I think Corey's question is excellent. We want to know what they're having to cut.
Yeah,
The
I mean,
public should know what they're having to cut.
right, last week we approved 2.63 wage increase for everybody. To offset that, the buildings are losing 1.5 of something.
Yep.
Now, how does that affect what goes on in the buildings, and how does it affect the kids? Kind of.
Yes, I will get that information to you. Thank you.
Okay. Follow-up questions? None? All right, with that, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstention, one abstention. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks.
With that, because we do not have our presentation yet, we're going to continue to move on to agenda item 12.
She's here, she's in the back. Sorry, I'm back here.
Oh, you are back there. Thank you. All right, well then we can get back onto the regular agenda item. So with this, Thomas Jefferson Elementary Principal Megan and Associate Principal Matt will give a brief presentation on the great things happening at Thomas Jefferson School.
Yeah, hi, sorry I'm late. I'm Megan Korak, principal at Thomas Jefferson. Matt is actually at another meeting for our PTO, it's our last one, and he's doing that meeting, so he cannot be with us today. But pictured is our staff for this year. For those that don't remember, it was a consolidation of Grant and Jefferson together. and so that is our crew at the beginning of the year there. All right, if you haven't heard, Diana did a nice presentation on social media about this, but Grant and Jefferson both got high impact schools from the state, which is nice to see. So just showing the growth that we make last year in both buildings, which was nice. Data highlights, so 27% of our TJ student population had a PSP at the beginning of the school year. Since then, 37% of those PSPs have been exited, and then in our second grade specifically, 52% of them have been exited, which is great to see. 4 special ed students were moved to a 504 plan, so graduated out of that special ed status. We had another 5th grade special ed student who received multiple areas of special ed services and now is only in speech and has dropped all the other ones because of the success they're making. So great things we see from those aspects. This year, so Thomas Jefferson had a Jaguar, but it was running a little ragged over the years. So with the combination of us and our PTO, we were able to raise money to get a new Jaguar. So then we spent the time where each classroom in the building came up with a name for our Jaguar, and then each grade level then voted on it, and then those names along with staff also put in their suggestions, and then the entire building got to vote on the mascot name, and they came up with TJ. Then we got a lot of students that, if you weren't familiar with Grant, they had the Bulldogs and we were Oreo. And they have missed Oreo, so Thomas Jefferson adopted Oreo, and now we have 2 mascots, so we have Oreo and TJ. Then to conclude, just some fun events that we've done this year. So we had a PJ party for our dance. It was a combination of PTO and a family event. We had cookie decorating, but of course, the weather didn't treat us the greatest, so we missed out on our families, but we didn't want the food to go to waste, so our students still got the opportunity to decorate. We had an ice cream social at the beginning of the year to bring all our families together from Grant and Thomas Jefferson, and then we just recently had our Hmong Heritage Month and celebration with that. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Questions from the board for Thomas Jefferson?
I love that you adopted Oreo. What a unique way to.
Yep, we have a certificate and everything.
Must be a pound cousin girl. Fabulous.
Yeah. Al Betry mentioned at our last CISA 9 meeting about the fact that you guys had the high impact award from the states. So thanks for bringing that up for everybody to know.
You have definitely made an impact on the state level, and that has come out, and I'm glad you brought that up because that has been talked about in the CISAs, both CISA 9 and CISA 8 over on the northeastern side. We've been talked about, so
Okay,
well done.
good to hear, thanks.
Others? Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Well, I think we can get back right onto track. We'll go with agenda item number 5 here. Any comments from none whatsoever? So we'll move right along onto agenda item number 6, employee handbook. The employee handbook updates for 2026-27 school year will be presented to the board for review and approval. I turn it over to you. Here you go.
Thank you. So I had attached a copy of the red line version, and I just want to say I apologize to any of you and or those in the community that opened it and weren't seeing clearly the differences. I did the document this year in Google Docs, and redlining doesn't show up the same way as it does in Microsoft, in like Word. And so therefore, because a lot of it was just added new language, they put it in green font by default, and that was not super clear compared to the black font. So this afternoon I did some extra highlights to kind of draw attention to the main areas of change. We're going to talk about those, and I've got them highlighted on the PowerPoint here, or the slide deck. And the updated one with those green highlights is also in there. So I'm happy to address questions after we get through the big picture highlights. So just like in past years, the focus of our, if you could, thanks. The focus of our updates has remained the same the last number of years. So this slide should look very similar because it's the exact same 4 bullet points I've used for the last 2 or 3 years. Our focus is on trying to establish consistency between our employee groups, to focus on the efficiency of the work required to implement the changes, alignment of those handbook provisions to practice, because there's some things that practice changes over time, and we noticed that the language in the handbook didn't necessarily always keep up, so we're always looking for those. And then making sure that the language is clear and understandable. That's obviously a focus. I don't want people reading our handbook and saying, what does that mean? I want them to be able to read it and say, okay, I get it. So the next slide talks about the housekeeping updates, of which there is always numerous. We have a lot of spaces in the handbook where dates are mentioned. We have to update those each year. We have changes in, for instance, who the admin assistant is out at Stettin, or one of our other buildings, Rib Mountain, is switching over who their admin assistant is. Anytime we have changes in principals or staff in the business office or the HR office, those names and titles and updates need to happen. The calendar reference, the link has to be updated. It'll have to be updated yet again as soon as this current year calendar goes, because when the website gets updated, that link will change. And so we'll need to make sure that we're always keeping those links active. Policy references, we always make sure that the links go to the policies that are referenced, to make sure that they aren't linked to an old policy that may have received an update along the way through your board actions. And then also the employee group wage schedules get updated based on what's approved from the budget. So those are kind of the basics, but there are a lot of those, not all of which have actually been reflected yet in what you see, but they will be by the time you get the copy for the June 8th board meeting. There are 3 primary areas of what I would call substantive changes that we're bringing forward in this rendition of the handbook. And we've talked for a number of years about these 3 areas. And finally, as we're moving forward for next year, we settled on a process to do that. The hesitation to make these changes has really been focused on the fact that our current staff have certain benefits that they have come to have over the years, and we really were hesitant to make changes that were wholesale changes that in any way somebody might look at as saying, I'm losing out on something. That's not a good place for us to be as an employer. That isn't something we want to move forward, if at all avoidable. And so we finally landed in a spot where we said we do still need to make these changes in these 3 areas. And what we're going to do, and this goes against our second bullet of our rationale of trying to make our process more efficient to manage, but it does get us to the long-term goal of getting these benefits switched over, and that is we're going to make those changes across the board for new hires July 1st, 2026 forward. So our current employees in all 3 of the main categories we're going to talk about, if you're currently an employee and you're employed anytime up until June 30th, you will have the benefits as they are currently described in the handbook, and those will stay described in the handbook, but we're adding a new component that will rephrase that for new hires going forward to bring consistency. In the case of vacation, what it means is we've taken multiple different schedules and we have blended them into one. So there will be one schedule for vacation going forward for new hires July 1st and thereafter. When we get to the end, I'm going to talk about one thing that we're going to be tweaking in terms of decisions for current employees, because there may be reasons why they would want to switch to the new benefit alignment, but that will be on an individual case, individual decision. We're not doing anything wholesale. So the employees will get to choose. The updated schedule is in the attachment, which we can pull up after we get through the presentation if you like. The holiday benefits are the next area of consistency and alignment that we wanted to focus on. In that particular benefit, what we had was one employee group, the nutrition services group, received 6 paid holidays throughout any given year. Everybody else in the district basically was on the 10 holiday schedule, except if they were only a school year employee, they received 9 paid holidays. 9 paid holidays for staff that are working about 175 days or 180 days a year is pretty high for our regional comps. And so as a result of that, we were looking at trying to bring those in alignment so that basically all of our school year staff in those support staff categories, this is again in part 2 of the handbook, so it's applying to nutrition, AES, our municipal group, and custodial maintenance. So what we're trying to do is get to the point where the 10 paid holidays will apply to anybody who has an employment position that is 230 work days or more in the year, and they will receive all 10 of those paid holidays. Those that are employed, and I put a bottom number of 170 days, we really don't have anybody regularly contracted for less than that. I was just trying to make sure that it's clear that these are not benefits that apply to hourly staff, just in case there were questions about that. And up to 229 days, all of those employees in those categories would receive 6 paid holidays. So to what I spoke about before, if we were to be applying this across the board, we have a segment of employees in our AES group that would otherwise lose 3 paid holidays. We're not doing that to them. They can keep their 9 paid holidays. They don't get paid for July 4th in that particular case. But anybody new hired that has not been with us is going to start with those 6 paid holidays if they work less than the 230 days. Again, this is part 2 of the handbook, so it applies to support staff. The third key area of change, and again, it's a different area, but you'll see the tie is all the same. For health and dental, we have had a different level of benefit. The employer contribution has been different based on the employee groups. They are all over the board, everything from the employer paying as low as 80% up to the employer paying as high as 95% for health insurance. And dental insurance is a little different, but it's still been disparate between all of the different support staff employee groups and our teachers and our admin and everybody. And so we're trying to bring some alignment to that area as well. And so going forward, beginning on July 1st, any new hires July 1st and forward, we are looking to have the exact same schedule provided for those benefits. And that would be for any full-time staff members, it'd be 85% of employer paid for health insurance, 85% employer paid for dental insurance. We would also be looking to move our eligibility to 30 hours a week as the minimum threshold to provide health insurance. That number was spelled out in the Affordable Care Act when that was passed a number of years ago. We maintained a 20-hour week threshold for eligibility for benefits up until this point. But as we've continued to look at our health insurance benefits and the costs and trying to get things into alignment, a number of our neighbors really subscribe to basically this kind of a structure, and we're looking to try to make sure that we have alignment across all of our employee groups. So this will make it much easier to manage going forward in our payroll and benefits area. And it'll make it much easier to explain to people versus when we're in orientation telling the custodian who's sitting next to the nutrition person that they're each getting a different dollar amount from us as the employer to support their family. But it does make it, at least temporarily, more difficult because we also are maintaining all of our current employees in their current structure. We're doing that by adding an additional level of codes just to kind of keep that differentiated and make that as easy as possible in terms of our implementation without having significant takeaways come from that. And again, this particular piece would apply to all employees going forward just to make sure that that is uniform. Before I talk about the last two, I want to pause there because that ends the pieces that are a little bit more blanket in terms of change in the event that anybody has questions about those.
Will the change from 20 hours to 30 hours, will that impact many current district employees?
It won't impact many, it will impact some. But it won't impact any of our current staff. Again, that's for July 1st forward. So none of our current staff will be impacted, but I will, in full disclosure, we have some staff who are less than 30 hours a week on our insurance now. They will still maintain that. They will still be able to stay on the plan. It's for new hires who we have no commitment with at this point in time.
So what's your plan for explaining this as you roll it out? Because sometimes it gets confusing when there are a lot of lanes that you're talking about.
Yeah, so the beauty of this being that it's for July 1st hires and forward, we'll be explaining that during orientation, and they won't get the explanation of what the benefits are from before. They're going to get just what the benefits are that apply towards them. And the added beauty is we're explaining one benefit, one coverage for all staff versus right now we're trying to explain 4 or 5 different levels of benefit and different contributions. So it's actually pretty confusing now. This should help for our new employee orientation. The one notation that I do want to mention is that, for example, I'm going to use our custodians maybe as the example. So their current benefit for health and dental and for holidays would not shift in comparison to the July 1st benefit forward, okay? Because they're currently at those kind of percentages or pretty darn close. The vacation benefit, however, does have an increase to it that they would be eligible for if they switch to the new benefit. Anytime we have, we're going to be sending out a letter that's going to be individualized for each person to let them know, here is your current benefit, here's the benefit for July 1st forward, and here's a link to be able to elect whether you want to stay on the current benefits in the package as they exist, or if you want to change to all of the new benefits, but it's the whole package. They won't be able to pick and choose and say, well, I want the upgraded vacation, but I want to keep the higher contribution that you're making for health insurance, for example. Because they need to be either in one bucket or the other. But we are going to give every individual an individualized letter as long as this gets approved and moves forward. And it will describe those two options, option A, option B. Option A would be the default, option B is optional, and they can select into that by filling out a online form for us. So we had a whole lot of conversation about that to try to make sure that we're giving them every opportunity to make the decision that's best for them and their families.
Sounds like you have a good plan.
We tried. I hope it goes that way and everybody thinks that. So, any other questions on these 3 more significant changes? I have 2 last ones which are a little less impactful. Teacher retirement, I would put this in housekeeping, but anytime you talk about a change that has the word retirement in it, people kind of go, and so I wanted to make sure that I spelled out what this was. We did remove a segment of language under the teacher retirement that talked about an old group that was grandfathered, that they could stay with the benefit as long, they would get their retirement benefit as long as they had at least 10 years of service. That language dates back to 2005. I believe that's when payroll said that it went in. We are now more than 15 years past the 2011 change, which is the second item. And so anybody that's still working for us at this point for sure is eligible for that benefit if they were hired prior to that date. They also are for sure eligible for the second piece that's listed in that category. And so we're just trying to clean up and take out language that has like caveats in it that no longer applies, because anybody still here fits that next category. We did that with a couple other things last year and the year before. This one came up as of this year because we're just hitting 15 years since the 2011 changes. We also had a number of questions this year. I think we're just getting to the point where folks that we hired after 2011 are getting to the point of retirement. And those of you who might have been around on the board, I know there's some of you at that point in time, the retirement language for teachers moved from a benefit like on the health insurance. They just get now a dollar amount, and there's also this, in 2011, now it's a tax sheltered annuity. So anybody hired since then. But because of that, there's no real definition of a retirement for those that fall into that post-2011 hire. And so I had one retiree this year who said, so you mean to tell me I've worked 32 years in education and I'm never actually going to retire because there's no definition for retirement? And I said, well, that's not really true. And so we referred to those folks in that category as retirement rather than resignation. But we decided to throw some language in there that clarifies how that retirement is recognized and ask that they also meet the December 1st date for letting us know, because that is really the true definition of our retirees. So that is in there. And again, I view that as housekeeping because it's not super significant, really has no bearing on any of the folks in that teacher category, at least not in any meaningful way. The last item is a change to the administrator retirement. And again, same as the first three substantive changes, this would only apply to new staff hired on or after July 1st. The current benefit for retirement for administrators is a defined benefit, which means it is related to insurance provided at a certain, like for a certain duration. So the benefit is what is guaranteed. What we're looking to do starting July 1st is move to a defined contribution, meaning the district would pay a certain amount, and that amount would then go towards retirees purchasing their own insurance going forward. We have, through all of the prior changes with all of our other employee groups, moved all of our other employee groups to some sort of a defined benefit. And therefore, anybody hired really since the teachers moved in 2011 to a piece where we give them money and they go buy their own health insurance. We're trying to get the administrators into that same space. In this particular case, it isn't so much we don't want to disrupt things for the administrators, but the statutes provide a whole because that benefit is part of the contract that they accepted along the way. If an administrator is already under contract, it's pretty difficult unless we're going to non-renew everybody and then rehire everybody to make a shift in that for any existing employees. I worked with an attorney and our OPEB representatives to try to figure and navigate this out. So we decided, similar to the other things, we're going to start at July 1st going forward. But they'll go into that defined contribution as well, so our retirees will move into a space where they purchase their insurance outside of the district going forward after retirement. And that is like the high-level summary of all of those changes. Questions on those last two pieces that I reviewed?
Any questions?
Okay.
Sounds like you planned this out a lot of time.
This has been a number of years coming. These conversations
I
have
remember some of
at
this,
least
yeah.
3 years, I think we've been contemplating. And I think the July 1st new hires going forward was the key to us being able to bring it forward, because the resistance has always been, we really didn't want to disrupt our current staff. So,
I see that. I'm seeking a motion to recommend to the full board the approval of the 2026-27 employee handbook language.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank
thank
very
you so much. And for your next meeting, just so you'll know, you'll have a clearer redlined version so that is more obvious attached to the board book. And you'll also have a clean one with all of those changes incorporated so you can look at both. So,
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we've already had agenda item 7. We're moving on to agenda item 8. Ms. Fuchs will present the proposed changes to the 2026-2027 paid meal prices. You're up. That's right. You're up.
Hello, I'm Karen Fox, Nutrition Services Director, bearer of good news, I guess, tonight. So every year we have to complete the USDA Paid Lunch Equity Tool. It's a matter of putting in the information and looking at what it tells us to do. So we needed to come up with the $3.19 required weighted average pricing. And the little spreadsheet they give us allows us to do that by inputting the different October meal accounts for free, reduced, and paid, or for the paid lunch pricing. So what we came up with to meet that pricing is across the board a 10-cent increase for each elementary, middle, and high school lunch price, and then a nickel for the breakfast pricing. Still is very reasonable pricing when you look at the cost of foods, and for us, supplies and labor. So that is, I'm asking for action on that. No action, I guess, no action. Just that you understand that meal pricing is gonna go up when they ask you, so.
Well, actually, we do have a motion on this. I'm seeking a motion to recommend to the full board the proposed changes to the meal prices as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciated. All right, agenda item 9. Mr. Tomsky, Dr. John Tomsky. I'm going to add that. Congratulations. We need to acknowledge those things when we have the opportunity to. And Mr. B.J. Brandt will present the suggested changes to the Athletic and Activities Code.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for taking the time to discuss this with us tonight. So really with the activities code, so as a secondary administration group, ADs, principals, myself, we've kind of kept track of situations, questions that have arisen throughout the year, and we met last week to kind of recap and adjust our code where we felt that it needed some adjusting. So really there's 4 or 5 different things going on here, and I'll just kind of summarize them, and feel free to stop me at any time if you have further questions about it. So Cassie, scroll down to 5, yep, right where you need to be, regulations. The intro paragraph, so previously it just said all participants must be full-time students, and it didn't really define what a full-time student means. So we added in our board policies on what defines a full-time student as it relates to athletics, so that is 5200 and 9720. So if you see on the agenda, we are seeking an update to policy 9720 as well this evening, and that is related to this clause. So as we were working on this, I guess just a little bit of context. So our middle schools, I believe this is the first year, have transitioned over to utilizing Fund 80 to fund their athletics and activities, which then opens up all of our middle school athletics and activities to any student in the community of that age, whether they be homeschool, private school, what have you. So as we were updating what defines a full-time student, we found that policy 9270 would not be in accordance with what we do with Fund 80. So if you look at 9270, we just added a clause on the end that says the restriction for non-WIAA participation does not apply to middle school athletics and activities. Because of the shift to Fund 80, middle school athletics now are not WIAA sponsored. So we had to update that policy to make sure it's in accordance with our athletic code and how we're funding middle school athletics through Fund 80. I'll pause there. Okay, moving on to attendance. So we did update this section of the policy. As we discussed as a team, we found that our habitual truancy policy as it relates to our athletics code was a little vague. It just basically said if a student is cited for truancy, okay, what kind of truancy citation? There are multiple ones out there. We'll serve a suspension of 15 days, and then was very vague about what happens after that. So we met as a group and decided that we wanted to align this with our current practices around truancy, specifically if a student is cited to Marathon County Truancy Court. So basically what you're reading there aligns our athletic code expectations with the structures that are already in place through the county for truancy. So just giving our ADs a little more direction on how to handle situations of athletes or activity participants if they're cited for truancy. Thankfully, it is a pretty rare occasion, but it does happen from time to time. The next one, that's actually, we talked about that in November. I kept it highlighted because we did make that change in November for our grading windows. We transitioned to applying ineligibility at quarter 2 and semester 1 and quarter 3 and semester 2 grades. We talked about that in November, but I kept it highlighted just for our knowledge. If we scroll down, we also added some verbiage about lookalikes. We did have a clause about lookalikes as it relates to alcohol, but we did not have a clause on lookalikes as it relates to tobacco and other drugs. And across the state, probably across the country, this is becoming more of an issue, so we wanted to make sure we had something in our code specifically around tobacco lookalikes, as that's becoming much more prevalent in our community and with some of our students.
So we are cleaning up that language so that we don't have a problem going into the future.
Right, so the athletic code will prohibit any use of tobacco or drug lookalikes. And specifically what we're referencing here, pouches have become popular.
We can thank these companies for trying to create these lookalikes that cause problems for all of us, as I've been hearing and been seeing in different areas, so.
Right.
But is that even enforceable?
Say that again?
Is that enforceable? Because we say a lookalike, and someone says, yeah, it was a lookalike, what are we gonna base our enforcement on?
It can be a problem.
I'm just
Can
thinking.
you answer that question?
I mean, I would say in issues where we run into interpretations of the code, like any legal document, it's tough to anticipate every angle of something that could happen. If we ever have an issue of interpretation, if it's a code violation or not, we just lean back on our activities council, which is made up of principals from both schools, ADs from both schools, and coaches from both schools to help make that decision. And then we keep notes of that, and I guess it kind of serves as a pseudo precedent. And then when we review the activities code in the spring, we'll try to, make any informed updates.
I'm just
to the
thinking,
code.
if you have a picture of a kid drinking a Busch Light NA, right, and it's not, I don't even know if that's legal or illegal. I think they're truly non-alcoholic.
Good example, though.
But,
Really.
yeah, I mean, and that's not illegal for somebody to do at whatever age they are. What basis would we have to reprimand them? And we don't have to answer that here. I'm just thinking, if I'm a student or a parent and that comes up, and I'm not advocating that, of course, what would we do?
I think the trouble we have is if we don't have this provision in there, we're basically given an easy out in some instances for students to say, oh, it was a lookalike. It's kind of like the same reason why if you refuse to do the testing for a DUI, the fines and the punishment for refusal are the same as the fines and punishment for having DUI. Like, if you don't have this in there, I could easily say a student that video you have of me or in the hallway or whatever, that was just a lookalike pouch, or that was a lookalike whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, I could see what you're thinking more like off, if you're off campus and
Right.
I could see that could be tricky too.
And I think you have already run into some of that already in the last year, where the lookalikes have been under question. You know, this is a lookalike. This is not nicotine. This is not alcohol, and that. So,
But an activities code can prohibit things that aren't illegal. Like you can say, in order to be an athlete and take part in our activities or our athletics, here's all these things you have to do, and it includes stuff that isn't against the law. Not everything in there is against the law. There's code of conduct.
character, behavior,
Right.
things of that fashion.
It's not
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a question of whether we can do it. It's,
Okay.
you know.
Well, I'm sure none of our kids would do anything like that, so it'll never come up.
Go ahead, continue.
All right. And then the last one, so, and we have policy 2431.01 on the agenda tonight as well. That's just bringing into alignment this document with what we have existing in policy. We have a policy on our activities code, so it's just matching up some of these changes that we made in this document with the official policy that appears in our board book. And an example of that is item 7, and I believe that's under athletic code violations. For instance, that was not in our document, but that was in our policy. And we think our policy and our document need to be in alignment. So that's why we're asking for an update to 2431 tonight as well. And with that, that's kind of just the summary of the changes and the why for activities code, policy 9270 and policy 2431.
I'm going to put the motion out there, and then if there are any questions, I'm seeking a motion to recommend to the full board the approval of the revised athletics and activities code. Follow-up questions?
Yeah, just one other question. And this also then incorporates any WIAA requirements as well, right? It's just kind of part and parcel.
Correct. Yep, there are things in there that are from the WIAA that we have to have in there.
And we pay to be part of that?
Yes.
How much?
I will defer
We
to.
did not have any, there weren't any fees this last year or the last 2 years to be a member of the WIA because of how the tournaments have been successful. So they have not had any
Okay.
membership fees for the schools the last few years.
I think it's been
WIAA has
even more than
very
2.
successful
It's been a
with the
while.
tournaments this past few years, and it was by the Board of Control that the Board of Control made the decision not to charge the membership any fees whatsoever because the tournaments take care of it.
Is there a term limit on their ED? The executive director?
Not sure. But,
Like, how long can they be an executive director?
oh, you're talking about limited
Yeah, term
terms.
limits, yeah.
There are term limits on the Board of Control, not necessarily for administration.
I think we should look into that, but that's another subject. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I had a quick question, and this was actually one of my daughter's friends brought up because they're on travel ball. And they're saying, are you saying through this, we could potentially have a student that's, in junior high at Newman or one of the other schools like Faith Christian, say, we'd like to go and participate with Wausau West, Wausau East, or I should say Horace Mann or John Muir, and because maybe they're going to see going to one of the high schools in the future, so start training and playing basketball, whatever it might be. This would allow them to do so?
Correct. That is exactly what. That's this is our first year navigating that. So yes, we have had seen an increase in private school students participating in our middle school athletic programs.
And that's why we're not part of the WIAA at the middle school level, so that we'd have the flexibility to do that. All right. Any other questions? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 10.
Next to her, just
Yeah,
those two
next one here.
policies, yeah.
Mr. Tomsky will present the proposed change to policy, which you have already done, so I'm going to skip over that, but we do have a motion for it. That is the policy 9270, home-based, private, or tribal schooling. I'm seeking a motion to recommend to the full board the approval of the proposed changes to policy 9270.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item number 11, Mr. Tomsky will present the proposed changes to policy 2431.01, high school activities code. And we continue, we'll do this motion. I'm seeking a motion to recommend to the full board the approval of the proposed changes to the policy 2431.01.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, opposed? Motion carries. Okay, agenda item 12. Mr. Urmansky, you've been waiting patiently when we were going to move you forward. Now your turn is here. Giving us some information about the buildings and grounds, and present on Riverview HVAC and roofing project.
Good evening. Tonight I'm here to get the board's approval to move forward with Myron Construction as our GC for the Riverview Elementary HVAC roofing project. Before I do that, I'd like to just share some important points and allow you to ask some questions also. So we have 75% complete plans and specifications for the project. And as planned, our next step was to find a general contractor to work with the districts, my department and administration, along with dynamic consulting engineers, to take the plans from 75 to 100%. And the important part of this was too often we don't capture what the district needs. It allows us to work through the problems, come up with more efficient and cost-effective ways of doing things. So we are, so the goal of this is when we get to 100%, whenever the funding source is available, we're ready to go. Because oftentimes funding comes in and then we have to wait too long. We miss bidding opportunity, we miss pricing opportunities because we have to go into design. So the whole goal here is to be ready to go. Next one, please. So just a quick timeline of what we've done since we had 75% plans. March 10th, we sent out a request for RFPs to various individuals that were interested in the project. This included a scope of what we needed in the proposal along with the plans and specifications that we currently have. Then on April 2nd, we had a mandatory pre-proposal meeting that allowed those individuals or companies to come in, ask us questions about the proposal, the plans, mechanical, lighting, whatever they wanted to, and then give them an opportunity to see the building and helping them prepare their proposal. Then on April 14th, we received 4 proposals that met the RFP requirements. On April 21st, the panel reviewed all the proposals and we chose 2 finalists that we wanted to interview at a later date. The panel included Wausau School District Buildings and Grounds, Administration, and then Dynamic Consulting Engineers. And then on May 1st, we interviewed the 2 finalists, and overall, the panel chose Myron Construction as the company we want to move forward as a GC. So if you go on the next slide, please. Thank you. So this portion between 75 and 100, we're calling that the pre-construction phase. I wanted to point out a few things about Myron's proposal and the proposal, the whole package itself. So Myron, this 25 to 100, Myron's fee, which was a requested cost that we had in our RFP, is $5,000. And with that $5,000, what that portion is that is where they can work with our design team, with the district, and that's when they get into the school and start looking at what does this project entail. It's also an opportunity, and what the expectation is that we limit the amount of surprises. So they're going to come up with valued engineering. They'll come up with, along with our team, they'll be coming up with, is this a 1-phase project? Is this a 2-phase project? And also during that time period, they're going to keep track of things that we have, issues that we have as far as supply, tariffs, all that stuff. So that's quite a bit of work to get us from 25 to 100%, but that is the objective of that portion. The estimated cost in the scope of the items that, it's basically the direct costs. The project, they were the lowest bid. They also had the best proposal, probably the most thorough proposal, a proposal that we all felt comfortable with, but it's $5.6 million. A couple things I want to point out, their direct costs were $5.2 million. And then to get to the 5.6, essentially they added on their pre-construction service fee. They added on the construction fee, the $118,000, which is 2.25%. And then there is also an inflation clause that they put in, and also we added some bonding, which is typical on a project. Some of the things I want to point out, and purposely we didn't have them part of the scope, was any additional needed insurance like builder's risk insurance, abatement, which some of that stuff, it has been pointed out, but we might capture some of that this summer. So these are some of the things that we can take care of ourselves, or we don't need a consultant to work on these things. The other thing, contingency, we did not include contingency, and the whole premise of this approach is that even though there will be a contingency set later, we're going to be working towards that right now. So from the 75 to 100, that's when we're going to start looking at where are the pinch points, or where are there potential issues, and we're hoping that we have those addressed when we go to bid, or when we have the 100% plans out. They're commissioning the envelope and engineering fees. So we also had, we allotted 10% for the project. This is the HVAC, structural, roofing, design fees, abatement, RFPs or RFIs, and any submittal things that need to be taken place. So even though we're tracking under that, the cost for those services will be, we're looking at 10% of the project. So I guess, do you have any questions on anything that I presented?
Let me put the motion on the table here. I'm seeking a motion to recommend to the full board approval to move forward with Myron Construction Corporation Incorporated as the general contractor for the Riverview HVAC and roofing project.
So moved.
Second.
Follow-up questions?
What does the inflation clause, you mentioned that, is this that if something goes up, their price could change drastically, or what kind of, does that, I guess, expose us to?
So with their proposal, because every proposal is a little bit different on things that they could add, that was a 4% because we know we aren't going this year for this construction season. So they indicated in their plans, or their proposal, 4%. Now, obviously, that's one of the things that we have to look at also. If this is a one-stage or two-stage project, we're going to have some additional inflation costs if we push it on to further years.
Okay, and on top of the 4% there, then they're paying an additional 2.25% on top of the 4% to come up with their fee. Is their fee going to be pre-inflation?
The fee is the 2.25 of the direct cost of the project. So the inflation is just a line item that they put in that they felt when reviewing the project and so forth, that's something we need to consider. So it wasn't, that inflation factor wasn't going to, it isn't for Myron Construction. That's just an earmark for the project that they wanted us to consider. So we were.
Does it change? Probably make sure that it doesn't change if it's a two-phase project, and that the other people involved with those other fees you were mentioning aren't adding on based upon that inflation increased price as well, right?
And for the design portion of it, that we have honed in. That's one of the things I wanted to do is try getting a solid number that we could go off. And now, if we will have, the 2.25 would not change for them. Now, if the cost of the project, of the direct cost goes up, the 118 would potentially go up.
Okay, that was my question.
Yes, okay, sorry.
That makes sense. You can't, they're not gonna agree to lock in at a dollar amount when this project might happen for 5 years.
Correct, and what we're just trying to show is, we have the 75% plans, this is where we're at today. And this is a better, I think this is a better picture of where we're at today than when you hire somebody to come in and say, give us a square foot cost of doing this, and then we'll just find a way to make it work, or we'll throw a number out and then we'll work backwards. We're trying to move, pricing into the project, not the other way around.
Okay.
Did any of the other bidders include, what they had not, all the insurance, the abatement contingency, did they include that, and how did that affect the overall number?
Abatement wasn't part of the proposal, so they didn't include that. Contingency, they did not, because that wasn't part of the proposal. We weren't asking for those, but Myron was the only one, I believe, that included a inflation clause in their dollar amount.
Thank you.
So it sounded like they were flexible with us because of the timeline and all of that kind of stuff, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm seeking a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I will call a special meeting to order, and I'm requesting for closed session pursuant to state statutes. Preliminary discussion regarding potential litigation, 19.85G.
So moved. Second.
Roll call?
Sarah?
Yes.
Charles?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Pat?
Yeah.
Corey?
Yes.
Lance?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.